Good morning and welcome this brand new week to another week of Breakfast Central, where we analyze some of the biggest stories happening around the country and the continent. We're in a different setup. We'll be back in our regular studio within the next couple of hours, or maybe by tomorrow. But we welcome you to join us for an extensive conversation all around the country. I am Ahmed Audi, and you're welcome.
And I am Osaugi Ogbon. Welcome once again, and we hope that you enjoy the next 2 hours with us as we take you through some of the major conversations happening here in Nigeria. We encourage you to join us, as always, be a part of the conversations by simply tweeting at News Central TV. Let us know your thoughts on these stories. And of course, for those watching us on YouTube, we'll say good morning to you as well. We kick off with sharing our top 3 stories from the weekend and some of the major conversations that happened over the weekend. Just before Monday. One of them, of course, is the controversy in Ondo State with Monday Okpebholo, the new governor of Ondo State, the governor-elect of Ondo State, and his team accusing Godwin Obaseki of trying maybe to disrupt the inauguration process. And of course, you know, there's also been accusations of a 5 billion naira budget for the inauguration process. There was also accusations that Obaseki had fled the state before the inauguration for reasons best known to him. But just this morning, I saw a video that was posted by Governor not by Governor Obaseki himself, but he was featured in the video to show that he was still in Ondo State and he hadn't fled the state. He also has said that he was not invited for the inauguration ceremony. And this is some of the controversies that have emerged in the last 48 hours surrounding the inauguration of the new government in Ondo State, led by Monday Okpebholo. Pretty interesting, I must say, Olive.
Very interesting indeed. I think beyond the accusations about him not being invited to the inauguration, he's also said there have been allegations against him of not planning the inauguration ceremony. I mean, part of the conversations we've heard regarding the challenges between the outgoing and the incoming administration would be that there is no synergy. They've accused Godwin Obaseki, of making it difficult and trying to frustrate the process that should be the smooth transition of power. In fact, in one of the statements, it was said that he's intentionally putting landmines on the path that would lead to the APC taking over power in Ondo State. And again, the allegations of the 5 billion naira budget would be, the response to that is that Godwin Obaseki has refused to plan the inauguration ceremony. And as such, Monday Okpebholo has stepped up to plan the inauguration ceremony, thereby budgeting 5 billion. I think the question is, whose responsibility is it to plan the inauguration ceremony? I would think, I'm not in government, but I would think that it is the person who is leaving power that should set the stage aside, prepare and welcome the new person. In fact, part of the allegations have been that Godwin Obaseki has not invited Monday Okpebholo to the government house to take him on a tour and just basically do a smooth transition process. And this is telling of what the next 4 years will be like in Ondo State. That is, if the situation or the case is not overturned by the court, because it's still a case in court. But if the APC government stays all through the next 4 years, it's very telling of what this government might be, what the governing will be like. The past 1 or 2 years in Ondo State has been void of actual governance, because it was politics between Obaseki and Philip Shaibu, politics between the PDP and the APC, and most recently, the disagreement with the election results from Ondo State. So at the end of the day, it is the people of Ondo State that will suffer this.
Well, hopefully not, but I think the main point that you've raised is the expectation that there would be continuous friction between the factions in Ondo State, the PDP faction and the APC faction. Those who are maybe still aggrieved with the result of the election, who are still in court currently, and those who, even after the court eventually gives its ruling, might still hold very strong reservations concerning the Monday Okpebholo government in Ondo State. So, we expect that there would be bits and pieces of that friction. Yes, the people would eventually be the ones that might be on the receiving end, because, they would receive less time or less attention from the people who are meant to be setting, Ondo State up, for, a better state, or to be a better state. And so there is that. But of course, I think it should not be ignored, the 5 billion naira budget allegedly that has been set for the inauguration of a new government. It is, a clear sign that the, government that is coming in might not be very, very cautious, and prudent with spending, in Edo State. I don't know that they're currently even meant to be
making any spendings because you've not had a budget, you've not presented any budgets before the House. But let's move away from Edo State to Equatorial Guinea that has been in the news for the wrong reasons. The president, Nguema Obiang Mbasongo, has now replaced the current Director General of the National Agency for Financial Investigation. Now, the name Baltasar Ebang Engonga has been in the news in the most recent times, but not for the good reasons. Now, part of why he's been in the news was, yes, there have been allegations of some financial misappropriation against him, but more importantly, videos of his sex tapes have made their way to social media. Allegedly, about 400 videos of his sex tapes made their way to social media. Now he's been reappointed, or he's been replaced by Zenon Obiang Avomo, who's now the new Director General of the National Agency for Financial Investigation. Recall that the reports had it that there was a raid that occurred in his house, and it was at the point that the raid occurred that these videos were found as part of the things in his house and were then eventually leaked to social media. There have been different arguments to this, and some would be that, has this man, was the law enforcement within its right to release these sex tapes to the public? Because at the end of the day, what difference does it make, or what difference do they have? Or is there really any difference between what they've done and what, people who would, what's that thing called? People who try to blackmail you with your pornographic content. It's just skipped my mind. But basically, revenge porn. Thank you very much. So what difference is it? Is there any difference between what law enforcement in Equatorial Guinea has done and revenge porn as is? However, there have been several measures that have been put in place to ensure that such moral inappropriate actions do not occur. For example, they have put CCTV cameras, they've ordered that CCTV cameras be put in all the government offices, and that should any situation occur like this, they will take swift action to ensure that these people are properly disciplined. It has brought some sort of national embarrassment to the country, looking at, of course, not just the fact that this has happened, but because now it has now started to unearth several other conversations. There have been allegations of people who may be committing suicide and some other sex tapes that have been discovered in the course of this. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think, unfortunately, maybe because of moral or cultural aspects of the whole conversation, and of course, the fact that we're in Africa, that's why it has gotten this level of attention. The main focus really was the financial dealings and financial investigations that were being investigated for, this fellow. Eventually, like you've said, those videos were leaked and, then, became viral, not just in Africa, but across the whole world. I'm not sure exactly, and I feel like there's a lot of fake outrage concerning this. There's a lot of fake moral, outrage. If you look at statistics on infidelity in Africa, there's nothing pretty about those statistics. So who do we think that those people are sleeping with? When you hear about that husbands and wives are cheating across the whole continent. I was just trying to get statistics now to look at the figures now, to look at what countries are the highest rated. Who do we think that they are sleeping with? This is a very common thing across the continent. There's nothing so strange here, to hear that, a married man was having, consensual sexual affair, with numerous women. There's also nothing so strange hearing that a married woman was doing the same thing. So I just feel like it is just social media value that is gotten from all of this. The fake outrage, the endorphins that come from everybody trying to tap into the conversation and share their own thoughts on it. Unfortunately, these videos have then been leaked to the whole continent. They're on different Telegram groups, different Twitter groups, different porn websites here and there, which is very, very bad for him. I think I heard that he was going to sue, and I believe that he should. Right. He should sue for the complete damage to his personality, his image, and along with every other person who was affected. And of course, we would almost never have their lives back because of how viral these videos have gone. Absolutely.
I think my addition to that would be the fact that, yes, personally, I do not in any way endorse what has happened or what has occurred in this
Which
situation.
part?
First of all, the fact that if you look at it, even in Nigerian laws, I don't know what the laws in Guinea say, or Equatorial Guinea say regarding adultery. There's been adultery that's been committed here. And in Nigeria, the party whose partner has committed adultery can sue. So, for example, in this case, the husbands of these women he slept with can sue him if he were in Nigeria.
Okay.
So, if it were in Nigeria, a crime has occurred there. However,
How many times do you ever hear of law cases for adultery?
there are.
How many?
I mean, Daddy Freeze was in one.
That's one.
There are a number of them. So the thing is because a number of people don't even know, first of all, that there's a possibility that they can actually sue for these things. The second thing is also because as a society, we have normalized cheating and made it look like, oh, everybody cheats, so we can go ahead with it. Anyway, we can't exhaust conversations about this, whilst we cannot in any way endorse the actions, as they're not actions that are why are you looking at me?
I personally, I'm not. I get what you're trying to say. We don't endorse it. These are immoral.
Yes,
I get it.
Yes.
But for me, I just don't. I feel like these things are so common. It's just that they're hidden. And the fact that this one came to light, it's not a disease.
It's
None
like
of them
days,
has a virus. Exactly.
Well, at the end of the day, he's not acted in a manner that is indicative of someone who's in public office. But that being said, his right has also been infringed upon. And I'm hoping that we can see an end to this case. But let's move away to the final story. Lukarawa is a new terrorist sect that has been announced to have, in some measure, infiltrated Sokoto. And we've started to see that these young men, there are reports that they came from the Sahel region, and that now they're offering financial incentives to recruit young people to become part of their extremist groups. Maybe not surprising. I mean, not surprising that they would offer financial incentives, especially looking at where we are as a country and the challenges that we're facing. Nigeria has fallen upon really, really hard times. But yes, last week when we took this story, we had the army chief sharing the updates and wondering why these people in Sokoto had not yet reported earlier when they were infiltrating Sokoto. And part of the responses that we talked about here on the show would be the fact that, first of all, these people may not have presented themselves as terrorists because the boundaries between Sokoto and these northern parts of the country and the Sahel region are very slim. They can literally walk through some of these, maybe from some of the parts of northern Nigeria to places like Niger, Chad, and all that. So when they can freely move about between these two countries, it's expected that there would also be a free localization of these terrorists, one, two. And in the event that they had even positioned themselves as terrorists, with the kind of challenges we faced as a country, the kind of insecurity challenges, what we've heard is of a number of people who even have to pay terrorists for them to secure their property. So it might not be that this is their first option, but maybe because the locals were not presented with any other choice. And right now more than ever, we've seen the need to explore conversations about how we can radically expunge insecurity, because if we don't, we'll start to see more and more young people being enticed and radicalized with promises of money. In this case, I heard is up to $1 million, promises of money and just being able to afford a decent financial life. Also, education plays a key role, with the North struggling with a high number of Almajiri children. Nigeria having one of the highest number of out-of-school children. We will continue to see situations like this if we don't prioritize education, because that is what the knowledge that they will gain from education will be able to combat. The knowledge will be able to combat these challenges, because nature abhors a vacuum. When people are idle, they will get into unfavorable activities like this. Yeah,
it's heartbreaking for me, and for me, I think it's important to point out the fact that yes, we might be hearing a new name, but like our security analyst said last week, it's pretty much the same people. And I think it's important to look at the freedom with which these groups can just simply emerge in a country that claims to have been fighting terrorism for many, many years. The fact that they don't feel any, they're out there in the open. There's no fear, with even presenting themselves and recruiting more members carrying their weapons. It really just tells what the strength really of the fight against insurgency in Nigeria is. These people are still being armed by whoever it is that has been arming, terror groups across Nigeria. Our borders are still not being fully secured. The poverty situation in the north is still pretty much the same thing. And so, I mean, we should be asking questions as to what exactly is different and how do you expect that these things would end? Is it by simply changing army chiefs? Is it by simply changing chief of army staff or you know, the service chiefs, I beg your pardon, every 6 months? That's not going to be the answer. So we should be worried, and, you know, and we will continue to expand this conversation and see, you know, what more needs to be said, you know, and how many more questions need to be asked of the current administration. But let's begin breakfast headlines this morning with our breakfast headlines. And of course, you know, we'll get to also share with you what our top stories are for today.
This morning, is prayer the solution to solving Nigeria's problem? We're starting to see, I mean, these are conversations that have been ongoing and we'll explore it this morning. Federal government ends NUPRC, customs revenue collection in tax reform. They seek to, you know, have a unified system. Lukarawa terrorist begins recruitment of youths in Sokoto. We reviewed the newspaper front pages as well this morning on Breakfast Central. And we urge you to join us as we open the phone lines. And we bring you Which Way Nigeria, the thought-provoking monologue brought to you by Osage. All these and more on Breakfast Central.
Now we begin breakfast headlines with security matters, where we understand that the acting chief of army staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oloyede, has arrived in Sokoto for his first operational visit to the 8th Division area of responsibility. During his visit, he is expected to meet with the Sultan of Sokoto and engage with key stakeholders in the area. General Oluyede would also address troops from Operation Fasonyama who are actively combating terrorists in the northwest region. Away from security matters, Governor Sim Fubara has announced plans to present the 2025 budget to the Rivers State House of Assembly, led by Speaker Victor Oko Jumbo. He emphasized the positive relationship between the executive and legislative branches, as seen in the smooth screening of nominees and the prompt passage of executive bills. Fubara made the statement during the Speaker's inauguration of a tertiary scholarship and empowerment program at Akiama and Agraya communities in Bonny local government area. And 4 Nigerians have recently achieved notable electoral victories in the United States and Australia. Dr. Oye Owolewa was re-elected as the shadow representative for Washington, D.C. Chiaka Bari won a seat in Australia's Ginninderra district under the Liberal Party. Segun Adeyino retained his role as Senate representative or state representative, I beg your pardon, for Georgia's District 110, and Yemi Mobolade made history as the first black mayor of Colorado Springs. In a congratulatory message, NIDCOM Chair Abike Dabiri-Erewa commended their achievements and commitment to public service in their adopted countries. Now let's talk election matters. The Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps has announced the deployment of 6,000 officers to ensure security across Ondo State ahead of the November 16, 2024 governorship election. The Commandant General of the NSCDC, Dr. Ahmed Audi, disclosed this in a press release signed by the Corps spokesperson, Babawale Afolabi, on Sunday. And now in Central Africa, where officials on Sunday said numerous Chad troops have been killed in a clash with jihadists in the Lake Chad region, the latest such incident in the Central African nation. The clash is the latest since late October, when an attack by Boko Haram jihadists on a Chadian military base killed at least 40 people. In response, the army launched an operation against the militants. In a statement, the Army Chief of Staff said on Saturday that there was a clash during the day, and after several hours, numerous terrorist elements were neutralized and that a toll will be published later. We now head to the east of the continent as Somaliland's presidential election nears. Vibrant campaign rallies sweep the breakaway region of Somalia. Cities from Boroma to Hargeisa are awash in party colors, green and yellow for President Muse Biki Kulmiye, orange for Wadani, and dark green for the Social Justice Party. The election, set for Wednesday, marks a direct vote in Somaliland, which declared independence from Somalia in 1991, but remains unrecognized.
waxay horseedayaan dimuqraadiyad isbedel dhaqaalaha kobca siyaasadda waddanka degta ammaanka hagaaga intaaba way horseedaysaa doorashada soo socota
waxaan doonaynaa oon u diyaar garownay 10 November doorashada insha Allah taala ilaahayna waxaan ka rajaynaynaa in maalintaas wax dhinac kasta ku qanco ay ka soo baxaan waddankaygu waa waddan dimuqraadiyadaha ee shan madaxweyne ayaan soo bedelay kii shanaad baan imika bedelnaa insha Allah taala waxaan rajaynaynaa wax fiican inay ka soo baxaan.
Yes, we are sending a message to the international community to give us recognition. Somaliland is a full functioning government. It has political parties. It has currencies. It's different from Somalia. It has stability. It has everything that government needs, all the elements of the state, so that international community should support Somaliland. They should look Somaliland because Somaliland is a stable country. It's a democratic country.
There is no much visible difference between ideologically speaking, the two main political parties, but there are differences between the personalities of the contenders. And that's very important here in Somaliland. So one is often portrayed as a strong militaristic man, and the other as a soft diplomatic guy. There is issue of economy also, issue of peace, issue of social cohesion and solidarity of Somalia.
And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. So we'll move back to Breakfast Central now to continue with our top stories right after this break. The Nigerian military has launched a major operation to combat the new terror group, Lukarawa, after a recent escalation of violence in Sokoto and Kebbi states. Acting Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede visited Sokoto yesterday to assess and motivate troops stationed in the area.
Lukarawa, reportedly linked to jihadi factions in Mali and Niger, has been drawing local youth through financial inducements and extremist ideologies. In response to increasing violence, the Nigerian Army and the Nigerian Air Force have deployed forces to affected areas, launching airstrikes and mobilizing ground troops in Operation Fasanyama to dislodge the group. This morning, we're joined by our correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, to bring us up to speed on the information that we have so far regarding Lukarawa. Good morning, Emmanuel. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning from Abuja. Thank you.
All right. Some would say that this has come as a surprise. Others will say, no, it's tomato, 12 and a dozen different names. But at the end of the day, a challenge with insecurity. But we want you to please bring us up to speed with what we know so far regarding the Lukarawas.
Yes. Just like you said, some will see it as a surprise. But the truth of the matter is that it's not a surprise. You know, sometimes in September, we traveled to Sokoto, Zamfara, and some parts of Kebbi and Katsina, and we reported a lot of activities of terrorists, where we went to Sokoto East and Sokoto North, coincidentally where Lukarawas are currently operating. That's talking about in Tangaza local government and in Gudu local government. The residents and citizens made it clear to us that in these particular locations, the terrorists have already started collecting, taxes to communities and sending communities out of their farmlands and forcing them to stay in IDP camps. We reported a story somewhere in Sabon-Birni where we saw a particular community within Issa and Sabon-Birni local government of Sokoto State where actually an entire community were moved into an IDP, talking about the various primary schools in Sabon-Birni local government headquarters. Now, the Lukarawas are not new. They are mercenaries. In 2018, you remember Governor Tambuwal of Sokoto State actually made a lot of effort to send them back. You know, they were mercenaries that were initially employed by some Fulani communities in Sokoto and Kebbi to help them protect their communities from bandits who came to rustle their cows. So they successfully sent bandits away. They did a good job for these Fulanis by protecting them from their cows. And then when they discovered that they are powerful enough, they decided to form, a terrorist group. And they named themselves Lukarawa, where they started inducing, youths and recruiting them. Then in 2023, last year, July, when there was a coup in Niger, because that coup actually suspended Niger's constitution, withdrew Niger from the multinational joint task forces, which Nigeria and Cameroon were part of, and that opens the border. And that simply means that Niger is not part of a regional bloc. So that makes the border now porous, and the Lukarawas now find themselves back to Nigeria, back to Kebbi State, and this time around, they now form alliance with local bandits, taking advantage of the impoverished nature of the Sokoto and Kebbi, where bandits have made citizens not to be able to go to their farms, to stay hungry, and so impoverished. So youths now are now, cannon foders, and are now being conscripted into the Lukarawa, unfortunate terrorist group. That has been the way that has been the way their history is, and it's not surprising that we're operating, and the Nigerian army will not cannot say that this is new. And very important, the new theater of operation, which is Operation Fansayama, is actually designed with its headquarters in Gusau, Zamfara state capital. Is actually designed to take care of Katsina, Zamfara, and Sokoto, and not Kebbi. Kebbi is not among. So I don't know what is going to happen with the people of Kebbi. I don't know why this confusion is going to appear. But and then this time around, the Lukarawa are operating in Sokoto North, while we still have the chunk of bandits operating in Sokoto East. Even though Sokoto North and Sokoto East have some kind of alliance. Talking about Tangaza and Gudu have some kind of border with Godabawa local government and Ilela local government, which are in Sokoto East, which we visited. So probably I don't know what the army is going to do about it, because it's a very, very complex situation right now. Yeah.
Yeah, when you say they are mercenaries, does this mean that these are not Nigerians? They are from other parts of, the Sahel region that are paid or sponsored by, whoever, and of course, have now invaded Nigeria to set up their base here. And, I like, the argument that you have that the army cannot say that they haven't been aware of them. But do you see any military presence, any security presence in those regions?
Yes, let me start by the question. The first question you talk about being mercenaries. They were mercenaries as far back as 2018. The records are very clear. They were mercenaries employed by some Fulani communities in Sokoto and Kebbi to protect them from bandits who come to wrestle their cows. So they did a good job, and they were sent. But of course, after doing that good job, they now became terrorists, criminals. And they were sent away sometimes late 2017 and 2018 by the government of Aminu Tambuwal, Sokoto State. When they were sent back in 2018, they now decided to remain there, and then later took advantage of the July 2023 coup by Niger, which withdrew Niger from regional blocks, and then suspended Niger's constitution, withdrew Niger army from the multilateral joint task force, then making our border with Niger, and of course Niger's border with Cameroon and other countries so porous. That's when they now came in, and they
so to clarify again,
terrorists.
Again, Emmanuel, just to clarify, these are not Nigerians, or is this a? Would you know if this is a mix between people from Francophone Africa or other parts of the continent and Nigerians?
They are not Nigerians. They are from Mali and Libya and some parts of Algeria. My records and my investigation shows that some of them are from Mali, some of them are from Niger, and some of them are from Algeria. Mali and Libya actually shares a border with Niger. So I think that's the access. That's the reason that's how they manage to walk through and get access to Nigeria. So clearly they are from Libya, and they are from most of them are from Libya, Mali, and then a few of them from Algeria. Of course, they speak the Fulfulde, which is actually a language that flows through between those three countries up to the northwestern part of Nigeria, and then some parts of northeastern part of Nigeria. So they are foreigners. They are foreigners, but right now they are formed alliance with local terrorists, which is so unfortunate. They are formed alliance with the likes of course we know that Nigerian army have done a very good job. They have they have put Bello Turji right now on the run, and some of his they have killed the general Kachala Sububu, and then of course very big champions have been killed, weakening the local terrorists in the northwest. But the ones that are coming up have been recruited by Lukarawa. Lukarawas are coming now with full force, and just like we said, the Operation Fansayama is meant to cut out for Sokoto, Zamfara, and Katsina State, and Kebbi is not, among. And Kebbi is it's actually the main entrance where these guys are coming in to take advantage of. Yeah.
All right. Has there also been, any blame, or would you say that there can be any blame that can be put on citizens? Because part of what we saw the army say was that the citizens didn't report, and they had kept quiet about this, wondering why they're just reporting now. So is there any blame? Is there a shared responsibility here for the citizens? I mean, these citizens who are, in some cases, living with fear, or in some other cases, having to pay terrorists to guard their farms and, just ensure that they're not being attacked.
Yeah, Yes, the blame by General Buba, that's the defense spokesperson, is just a normal way of, seeking for the support of citizens to come and help them, provide vital information to fight terrorists. But you recall our last visit to Sokoto, where we spent up to 4 days. We spent almost every day speaking to citizens who mentioned to us various locations, who even claim they can take us there. That the terrorists are already seated, they're already on ground, and they're already collecting taxes. These citizens have been crying out for years. So I beg to differ. I beg to differ that, because we have videos, we have evidence to show that we have talked to citizens who spoke to us in various languages, Hausa and Fulani. They spoke to us passionately on 4 or 5 different occasions, that they have been crying out that these terrorists have come and have taken their lands, and that they need help, they need more reinforcement of troops. We went to Sabon-Bruni local government area, Isa local government area, which is a neighborhood, just a stone throw to Niger Republic, where we saw a whole community was being sent away from their communities to just come and take refuge inside the local government headquarters. About 4 secondary schools, 4 primary schools, making 8 schools being occupied by communities who have been ransacked as IDP camps. So I beg to differ that, because these citizens have been crying. For Sokoto, where we can tell you point blank that we have evidence that they have been crying for years, for months, that they need reinforcement and that terrorists have taken over their communities. So it's not true. I don't think that. I beg to differ that the citizens have kept quiet and have not spoken. So I think that statement has to be investigated, have to be clarified. Yeah. We will find a way of clarifying that if I have an opportunity of speaking to General Edward Buba. Yeah.
All right, Emmanuel Mbagodu, thank you very much for stopping by. I think it's very important, the place where you mentioned that these aren't a new terror group. They've been there since at least 2018. That's a very important detail there. Thanks for your time. We'll speak with you again pretty soon. Now, away from the security situation, let's take a very short break. When we come back, we, of course, continue this morning on Breakfast Central.
It's been 7 days since news broke that Nigeria's First Lady, Senator Oluwemi Tinubu, and the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, planned to spearhead a national prayer session to address the country's numerous challenges. A story that the First Lady has now debunked. Now, this is coming on the heels of seeking divine intervention in solving the country's insecurity and social and economic challenges by concerned Nigerians.
Now, 5 days after the announcement, the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, PFN, has called on Nigerians to join a 40-day prayer starting from January 6, 2025 and ending with a national prayer gathering in Abuja on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2025. The aim is to address the hardship facing the country and to seek divine intervention for relief and prosperity, as mentioned by PFN President Bishop Francis Wale Oke. The increased calls for intervention worry a section of the populace who think our problems are bare and wonder why we always resort to divine intervention without nipping the crisis in the bud.
Issues concerning corruption with anti-graft agencies have not yielded results due to political infiltrations. Multiple policies have heavily impacted the cost of living, while jumbo salaries and living la vida loca continue at the helm of power. How else will our leaders learn if they fail to make the needed changes here on earth as it is in heaven? Well, these are a few assertions emphasized by some Nigerians. And to speak on this, we're joined by the chairman of the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, Lagos chapter, Mr. Yemi Davis. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you as well. Yeah. So as we continue to navigate the intersection between faith and politics, we often would hear criticism leveled against spiritual leaders for ensuring that they're always praying for Nigeria and that, they're always putting the nation in prayer. So the question now is, why is it important to pray for Nigeria? Shouldn't we maybe place more priority, according to some, on holding leaders to accountable than praying?
Yeah, you're correct. Actually, I think it's the way we define the prayers. Okay, prayer is not supposed to be an end in that sense, like an irresponsible way of putting things to God to just do. And I think that's a challenge we're having. Instead of us tackling the challenges we have, we just want to say, okay, God, just come and do this, just come and do that, and it will never happen. And I think we should know that will never happen. I think prayer should be a means to an end. yes, the things are so complicated and so complex. I mean, I've been in this country for more than 4 decades. I've seen the same story, again and again. And somehow you just want to say, God help. But the way I think God will help is giving you the right steps to take, like a download. So you go to God, okay, this thing is complex. This thing is out of order. What should we do? Then God gives you like steps to take. We call it strategy that will make things work. So my thinking is prayer, as much as we publicize prayers, we should talk more about what steps we want to take to make things happen. After you've prayed, to download things. Look at people like Joseph in the Bible or Daniel. It wasn't just the prayer. The prayer was a download. And then there was a download for Joseph that, okay, let there be this economic strategy of reserving 20% for 7 years. And that worked. So I want to hear of strategic economic, ideas coming from the prayers, how to tackle insecurity problems. So the prayers is not an end. I think that's where we might be missing it. It's a means to an end. If the government wants to pray, fine. But after the prayer, I want to hear, okay, we're going to do this for medium businesses, small-scale businesses. We want to cut the cost of governance and do this and do that so that we can, plow those monies into more palliatives. We want to hear some very specific steps from the download, not just handing everything to God, that God should just come and turn the country around.
When you be clear on what you mean by the download. What exactly is the download? Are you saying that after this 40-day prayer starting in January, sometime on the 14th of February, there would be some revelation, as to what must be done for Nigeria?
For the Pentecostal Fellowship, it's a whole bag in the sense that we're going to be 40 years next year. So it's part of the celebration. So it's beyond just praying for Nigeria. The Pentecostal body of Nigeria will be 40 years in 2025. So part of our celebration activities is to pray, okay? We're praying for Nigeria, which I think we need. What I'm saying is, after the prayers, we keep bringing up steps that we're going to take to help with the nation. Now, I believe the Pentecostal body has been doing a whole lot, even before now. Unfortunately, we have some deficiencies in terms of communicating the things we do. So it looks like we're only praying. No, the churches in Nigeria are doing more than praying. We're doing a lot to step into the gaps of the failure of leadership. It's a big crisis, and unfortunately, the church has not been communicating, perhaps because of the Jesus' injunction that when you're helping somebody, you don't have to tell everybody you're helping the person, and I think we've taken that to an extreme. So I think going forward, while we are praying, we should also communicate what we're doing to help businesses. I mean, in our church, for instance, virtually every week, we're spending millions helping with feeding alone. But you don't want to come and show people's faces on TV and feeding this person. There should be some dignity even when you're helping people. But I believe that the church, we need to communicate more going forward. We're helping a lot with community transformation. We're helping a lot with education, scholarships. It's a whole lot. So I feel that balance would help us not to see prayer as an excuse, in that sense, not to see things change practically.
I mean, it's important to do a lot of work in that regard because, that's one of the hallmarks of the Christian faith, being able to stand for each other, having a community, looking out for each other, giving to the poor. But I think one other area that the church has faced a lot of criticism and spiritual leaders will be in the area of holding political office holders accountable. And the accusation that has been leveled against the church is how sometimes the church does give platform to these political leaders and looks away and maybe not speaks up as often as they should. So how much would you say, or how involved should religious leaders be when it comes to issues concerning politics, policy development, and also calling out corruption where necessary? And should they even give these politicians a platform?
Yeah, I think there should be a balance to that, in the sense that, Scripture says we should honor those that honor is due. But I also believe that we should speak truth to power, right? I believe that. I believe. My only concern is Nigerians' problem is beyond just the political leaders. I think it's us ourselves, because the leaders are not dropping from the moon. They're from us. So if you talk about this person today, when somebody else gets there, the same thing happens. And that doesn't really resolve it. I think the main issue or the main thing that I think the church should do, and I think we are focusing on that much more, is proper mind shift. And I think churches have that platform weekly, Sunday, midweek services, training the people, teaching the people. Because if you don't shift the mindset, then you'll just be forever talking. Because after this election, a new crop will come in, whether it's from the north or from the south or from the south-south. It's the same Nigerians that get into power. And these Nigerians are the people we see every day on our streets, in our neighborhoods, in our churches, in various places. So I think much more than talking to, speaking truth to power is educating the people. There has to be a cultural shift. An average Nigerian needs to change. I wouldn't lie to you. The way we think, people, if young people, say not too young to rule. We have some younger people in power now, and they're misbehaving. So you ask yourself, if the older ones are misbehaving, younger ones are misbehaving, then it's a cultural problem. Corruption has become a culture. So I feel, what PFN is poised to do going forward is educating people. We have to focus on telling the people the truth. Beyond people in government, the people we are leading, that we speak to daily, weekly, so that when that same person gets into power, at least we can have some measure of shift.
But do you also understand when Nigerians push back against some of these prayer sessions that are themed Prayer for Nigeria? Is there an understanding from the PFN and other religious bodies, when people say that we're tired of praying? We've been praying for so long, nothing seems to be different, So is there an understanding in the church that Nigerians are tired of anything themed prayer for Nigeria in distress? If you attend the Catholic Church, or anything that has to do with praying for Nigeria?
Yeah, I agree with you. I said it earlier. I think the communication seems lopsided. So if you say you're going to fast for a number of days, it's fine. But I think we also needed to have said many other things that will be done to help people see that, it's not just about prayer. We're helping with these palliatives. We're also tasking government to do this. I think the area for me, it's more communication, because we're doing a lot. So we are doing a lot. For instance, there was flood in Ondo State. I know the PFN sent tens of millions to help out, but I don't see it in the news media. And maybe we didn't communicate it the way we should, but we're hearing about the 40 days of prayer. That's what I mean by more communication. So if you hear the things being done by the church, we had a conference in Lagos, and I said, for Lagos especially, where I have some measure of influence, that we want to communicate what churches are doing regularly, so that when you hear about prayer at all, it's maybe just a little portion of it. But all these things are happening. I know a lot of churches are stretched. We're not the government in that sense. Yes, we preach the gospel, we offer hope to people weekly, which is a lot. It seems intangible, but it's a lot. I've had people in our church send me emails, say, thank God for church, my head is a bit okay. That mental health, that you have people you can fellowship with, you can greet, and some statements made, which we call sermons, that give you hope and help you to live through the week. It's intangible, but it's a whole lot. So we shouldn't look at prayer as something that is irrelevant. We're not just praying for the government, we're also praying for the people. But I think the area we need to work on more is communication, so that it doesn't appear like it's just prayer they're praying. The country needs more solutions.
Right. Thank you for really highlighting those points. I think another angle would be to ask, does it feel like the church is being picked on a lot? Does it feel like the church is in some measure under attack with, a number of the darts that are being thrown? It feels like, I've heard a number of people who would react to certain statements that have been made. An example would be when Peter Obi went on the podcast and talked about, turning vigils to night shifts and ensuring that there's more productivity. There were a number of Christians who interpreted that as him attacking the church and saying that the church will still thrive and continue to do what it needs to do, and that's some sort of an attack. There were others who said this was just mischief at its finest, and that people were just misinterpreting what he was saying. So I don't know if you saw the clip and if you have any thoughts on that, and also to add, if you do think that the church is under any form of attack.
Yeah, well, I think it's mixed feeling for me, because I won't say it's an attack. I see it as seeing us as the light, okay? If they are expecting certain things from you, that means the potential is there, okay? Maybe you want to also take it as a responsibility, and we are the light anyway. The night vigil thing, that's the list of our problems. In Dubai, for instance, on a Friday in Dubai, you realize that they shut down just to pray. That doesn't affect their productivity. So I don't think night vigil is a problem. How many churches do vigils every day? The mainline denominations that we all know, very few do vigils daily. Where's even the diesel to do vigil every day? Yeah, there are some churches that do that, but that's highly insignificant. So so when people say it was like an attack, I think the way it came out from Obi, it wasn't what he intended to say. I think it was just talking about productivity. So we could flip it, that if there are more jobs, okay, people will be productively engaged. But it's not the church that produces the jobs. If they have, I mean, I've been to countries where you work in the night. You can't have night shift without adequate security. It's not the church that provides security in that sense. So if those things are in place, then people will be productively engaged. And if I have a work to do that is a night shift, and if I now choose to go for a vigil and they fire me, that's my own foolishness. But to now say it's the night vigil that is affecting the productivity, we need to think again. No. If there are enough, as I mentioned about Dubai, you have security, you have adequate power supply, the systems are working. So even if they have to shut down on a whole Friday, it doesn't affect their productivity as a nation. So
do you think those who, interpreted it as an attack on the church, and they were even warning Peter Obi, that the Christian faith will not support him any longer? I think one pastor said, do you think that was, intentionally misinterpreting what he said, or they just didn't understand it at all?
I think it's also the way the media, just pushed it out. And I think it came out not the best, Obi has a passion for productivity. It's fine. We all want that. Everybody wants development. Whether you're Muslim, Christian, or atheist, we want development. But you now don't zero it in on a particular tribe or religion. Productivity is productivity, okay? Provide roads. So I think the statement should have been more about, we want to have more people to be more productive so they can attend to their jobs and do more things rather than wasting time doing certain things. So I don't really see it as an attack. I think it's just that it should have been better framed.
Okay. Yeah. But as we count down to 2027 elections, I think the final question would be, taking a cue from 2023 elections, we saw that religion and tribe were major dividing factors. How can we as a nation navigate these very, very delicate lines and ensure that we don't see a repeat in 2027, or are we not even ready for that?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's very painful. I lead people in church. We have different tribes, different affiliations. And the question we must ask each other is, what do we really want? We want good roads, water supply, education, proper infrastructure, security. Everybody needs that, whether you are a Christian or a non-Christian, whether you are this tribe or that tribe. If we agree on that, then we'll see the foolishness of trying to shoot down a particular tribe or fight each other. We need to face the main thing. Look, there are great engineers and there are corrupt engineers. There are, in every tribe, there are great people in every tribe, and there are very horrible people in every tribe. So it's not about one tribe is better than the other. So we need to tell ourselves the truth. And I encourage pastors or leaders, people that have the opportunity of conversing with people weekly, let's educate our people. You're not fighting the other person. It's infrastructure, it's national transformation we need. Okay, so whether you are white or blue or this or that, just be a blessing to the people you are leading. Whatever portfolio you have been given at the local government level, state level, or federal level, be a blessing to people. people should be glad you came. People should be thankful that you are a blessing, not a problem. I think that's the main focus we should have. And with that education that needs to permit even the media space, it will douse that tension. It will douse it. It should douse it if that takes place.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. We've had a conversation about the role and the intersection between faith and politics in Nigeria. Looking at the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria, we've had the chairman with us and also the lead pastor of Global Impact Church, Pastor Yemi Davis. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
All right. Now let's take you through a recap of the conversations we've had so we can also share with you what's coming up next. This morning on Breakfast Central, Lukarawa terrorist begins recruitment of youths in Sokoto. We're joined by our correspondent Emmanuel Bagudu, who shared with us exactly what he knows. Is prayer the solution to solving Nigeria's problem? A critical question that has been explored here by Pastor Yemi Davis. Fubara set to present appropriation bill to Oko Jumbo-led assembly. Now let's share with you what's coming up next on Breakfast Central.
The government to end NEPRC and customs revenue collection in new tax reforms, and also the newspaper front pages. The major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning, and we'll also be bringing you, as always, Which Way Nigeria.
Thank you for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. Let's share with you some of the big stories making the headlines on the newspapers. And we'll begin with the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch newspaper, we'll be looking at some of the big stories and maybe opening the phone lines as well for you to join in. States' debts hit 11.4 trillion naira as federal allocations rise. Foreign debt hit $4.8 billion as states owe 4.27 trillion naira local debt. Lagos, Rivers, Kaduna, Delta, Edo top chart. NLC gives governors December 1st deadline for minimum wage payment. Husband arrested for allegedly setting wife ablaze in Ogun. Wow. Traders demand 3.4 billion naira compensation for Lagos market demolition. Ondo Governorship poll. IG bans Amotekun, others as 15,500 ad hoc staff deployed. INEC clears 1.7 million voters for Saturday poll, 295,856 PUVs uncollected. PVCs should be collected, so please, if you're one of those numbers, we're hoping that you can get your PVC before the election. Troops launch manhunt as Lukarawa intensifies killings in Sokoto and KB. Ministries making illegal requests for workers' promotion, according to a memo. These are the stories this morning on The Punch. Let's move to the next paper.
The Daily Independent comes up next. A big story there says, Trump's win may weaken Naira, raise debt service cost on the PMS prize. That's very, very interesting. I'm not even sure where to start from in reacting to that. Also, federal government saves 5.4 trillion naira in subsidy removal, says the presidency. Says Atiku envious of President Tinubu's position as president. Okay. Serap asks Tinubu to stop Wike and governors giving cars and houses to judges. New minister says he was appointed to deliver Kano to APC in 2027. Acting Chief of Army Staff seeks citizens' cooperation to overcome insecurity. And also, despite increased aircraft and airfares, airfares will remain high, say stakeholders. Obedient Movement re-strategizes, insist on a new Nigeria in 2027. We can also find here, no blackmail can stop us from demolishing illegal structures. That's also on the news this morning on the Daily Independent newspapers. I think the final story that we can share, Ondo gubernatorial poll, IGP bars Amotekun from election duties. These are the big stories on the Daily Independent.
All right, let's move away from the Daily Independent to the next paper we have this morning, which is the Vanguard newspaper. And on the front page of the Vanguard, petrol, banks loan for imports to hit 3.5 trillion naira. There's some riders, they're not very clear, but marketers set to increase importation. Pump price higher than actual market cost, NLC alleges. We also have here claims Nigerians are being ripped off by marketers. At $72 per barrel of oil, imported petrol should be cheaper in Nigeria, says experts. And we have Ipman Falls NLC says market fully deregulated. Why marketers prefer importation, according to analysts, and federal government is supporting marketers' move, according to Ogban. I think that's what that organization is called. I'm not quite sure. It's a bit blurry. Dangote refinery has commercial terms issue, according to expert. We can also see here minimum wage. NLC directs workers in defaulting states to begin strike December 1st. Warns against making Rivers workers as victims of political crisis. Demolitions. We won't succumb to blackmail, says FCT minister. Bode George to Sanwo-Olu. Lagos traders harassed, flogged like criminals. Wow. CAF Women's Championship League. Dominant Edo Queens, Mall CBE top Group B. At the top of the paper, it's rare privilege to be Bayelsa governor, according to Diri Institute's Ernest Okoli annual lecture. Obi can become president in 2027, will prepare very well, says Tanko. Hunger, children scavenge for leftover at parties in prayer houses. On page 7, a stark reality or stark picture of what the grim reality is. Grid collapse, certain elements sabotaging power sector reforms, according to Adelabu, and Nigerians are waiting to find out what these elements are. But beyond the talk and the rhetoric, Nigerians just want to have power. They don't want to pay exorbitant prices and not get anything in return. And final story here, Obaseki Okpewolo differ over nomination for non-invitation for inauguration and the alleged 5 billion naira budget. That's all on the Vanguard. Let's move over to our final paper.
The Daily Trust newspapers this morning says cement hits 8,800 naira as cost of building materials skyrockets. Iron rod jumped from 800,000 naira to 1.6 million naira in 1 year. Situation dashing our hope of owning houses, says citizens. Experts blame naira depreciation and transportation costs. ACF urges action as Lakurawa kills 15 in Kebbi. Governor Idris sends delegation to NSA and CDS, say terrorists may soon overtake Argungu Emirate. Acting Chief of Army Staff visits Sokoto, seeks residents' support. Rescue our children, parents of Zamfara students in Cyprus beg governor. And also, Kawu to Kano governor, don't please Kwankwaso to expense of masses. Those are the lead stories on the Daily Trust newspapers this morning. I think, it's important to, once again expatiate on the story on the Lakurawa terrorist group, as they are called. We had a conversation earlier with our correspondent in the northern part of Nigeria. He joined us from Abuja, and I think he clearly said, from information that he has gathered and what he knows, strongly enough, the Lakurawa group aren't a new group. They've been in existence since 2018 at least. He says that they were invited by the people back then to help safeguard residents in Sokoto and Kebbi states, I believe, against the bandits. But of course, right after that, they then became, set up their own terror group or their own sect, and have now become a thorn in the flesh of these
Frankenstein
people.
Monster.
Exactly. But the point is, they are not new. The, Army spokesperson, if you remember last week, in his address, said that they're a new terror group. And of course, that's what the news has been reporting, that they're a new terror group, which is, not true. But it doesn't make the severity any different or any less. It doesn't make it less insane to be hearing that in 2024, This is after dealing with the same insurgency and bandits and unknown gunmen and terror groups here and there and kidnapping since at least 2005. In 2024, a terror group still has the ability to emerge and to re-strategize and to rearm themselves. Let's assume that this is a new group. That in 2024, we still have these groups with the capability to arm themselves, to organize, to hold different swaths of the northern region as their own, to collect taxes from citizens, from farmers, from traders, to challenge the Nigerian army and the Nigerian security forces in 2024. And I'm pointing this out because I need everyone to understand the extent to which we have maybe not failed, but we've done pretty poorly. And yes, it could be worse. I never want to beat down on the army and the Nigerian army, you know, because they've given their lives, they've sacrificed so much to keep Nigeria safe, and I'll give them the credit that they deserve. But the Nigerian government itself, how is it positioning itself as a country that is developing and is attracting investors and this and that, when we still have these things being a reality in parts of northern Nigeria, in Sokoto, in Kebbi, in Borno, in Zamfara, in many of all these places? How?
Right.
Like how it's completely mind-blowing.
It's really heartbreaking, you know, and it doesn't seem like we're out of the woods yet when it comes to conversations about insecurity. Even what's scary is the confidence, the boldness with which they're able to carry out their operations. We see bandits and terrorists brandishing weapons, doing giveaway on social media, and it just feels like there's almost a sense of hopelessness that Nigerians feel about the situation. So it's really a sad situation. And even now, because media, and by media I mean social media as well, is how we shape the narrative and shape the desires and aspirations of a lot of young, impressionable people. So there are people who will watch, for example, you on TV and, you know, watch us and say, because they're doing this, I would like to have a career in media as well. What I'm worried about is the more we start to see the boldness of these bandits and these terrorists who are taking to social media to display their boldness in, you know, carrying out illegality, we're in a way also letting people know that they can get away with it, and they can get away with things. And the younger generation are looking, and they're being inaugurated, they're being radicalized, being taught the wrong things, and being given money to lure them into this trade.
And that's why I started with talking about the boldness with which these people can even emerge. If you look at the news every week, and I think I pointed this out on Friday or Thursday, one of the newspapers, you know, pointed out a story, or, you know, had a story where it said 481 or so terrorists had been killed. You know, and we've seen these numbers repeatedly. You know, every now and then you see in the news where they say 600, 280 something, 400, 300. And if you look at, just imagine that number. To kill 400 people from a terrorist group. If you murder 400, and God forbid, 400 Nigerian police officers, that's a massive hit on the Nigerian police force and its capabilities. So if you've repeatedly killed these number of people and every week you just hear that a new one is emerging, then somebody's lying.
Something is happening. It's also a hydra-headed monster that we need to fight through multiple means. We have Mohammed calling from Mina. Good morning, Mohammed. Thank you for calling. Please go ahead with your comment.
Good morning. I'm happy to be with you.
Very much.
Yes, good morning. I'm happy with you.
We're happy to have you as well. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes. I'm shocked of what I concur with that young man talking about the army and the federal government. I have to be very, very frank with you guys. The government is aware of all these things. I don't forget what I'm saying. We are just people quiet, people being men, people being killed. The rest are not toxic at all. In this country, what's the government doing? I really concur with you, my gentleman. I concur with you. The government should be up and doing to protect the life. That is the responsibility of every government. We don't just sit down and be watching and be doing all the problem that are solving is political problem. They are not solving the problem based on how it happens. Somebody will tell you, as I'm talking to you, something is being done. What is being done? Nothing.
Thank you very much for calling. And I mean, he's talked about the government needing to be up and doing, up and about regarding the fight against insecurity. And the government is doing, something. I don't think that they're not doing anything. I know that the Nigerian army, again, is also every day they're putting their lives on the line. I mean, every time I think about their families, I imagine how they cope. Maybe this, again, brings back the conversation that we've been having for the longest time about state police and the role that state police would help in the fight against insecurity. Some of these people are localized, they're within the communities. The communities themselves know some of these terrorists, but they can do little or nothing, really, to hold them to account. So, again, it brings back the need for state police and why the current administration should decentralize security conversations. It shouldn't be something that will be at the center. We need to see more and more people involved in the fight. We need to see more agencies, the police, and particularly the conversation about state police. We won't stop there. Just to mention, like Mohammed has called, if you'd like to react to any of the stories or to contribute, the numbers to call are on your TV screen. I'd like to take a story. I was looking it up. It's on the Daily Trust. Rescue our children, parents of Zamfara students in Cyprus beg governor. Now, this is not the first time we'll be seeing a story like this. The Nigerian government, with good intentions, has in several occasions sent a number of Nigerian students abroad for different causes. We've seen them, go to do their masters, fully funded masters program by the government in several instances, under several names, and different states have embarked on this. But one of the challenges with a lack of continuity when it comes to government and government policies, we tend to see it play out in situations like this, where the previous administration had sponsored these students abroad. Now their school fees, their house rent has been expired. They've been kicked out of the hostel into the cold. They've been kicked out of school. And the current administration is struggling. The administration of Governor Dauda Lawal has said that this is one of the challenges that they inherited from the previous administration. They've had to offset similar situations like this in other parts of the country. So we'll come back to talk more about it. We have a call coming in. Good morning, Dakbo. Thank you very much for calling.
Good morning, Oli.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
Okay. I want to comment on the security in Nigeria. Sometimes what media normally do to some of these issues, that are adding more problems to these issues sometimes, you understand? Now, let's go back to this minor issue when they arrested some minors and the media, everybody is saying that what did the way they treat those minors and every other thing. At the end of the day, you could see that when they get to Kano, the Kano State governor is giving them new phones, 100,000 and all those kind of a thing. Now, another issue that we are not looking at is that when the end government is going on, we talk of minors too. They go into private place where they look the place, they do all those kind of things. These are the challenges that we are having in Nigeria. Now, for example, the that government happened in Southwest. It happens in some parts of the Southwest, maybe parts of the Southeast too. Did you see minors coming out to come and do all these things? For example, in NSCDC issues, where they have issues in Lagos at that time, you don't see minors coming out. It's because there's some certain things.
Oh my goodness.
Fortunately, we lost that
call. Yeah, I'm hoping that you can call back.
Right back.
Yeah, and just complete your thoughts. But yes, I think that's another issue. Another issue regarding insecurity would be the fact that, yes, minors, a number of these minors are brainwashed and recruited from an early age. Also, the fact that we have an education problem. The higher the number of out-of-school children we have, the more likelihood these people are to be victims, of brainwashing, of radicalization, of being co-opted into terrorist organizations and used to threaten the country.
And that's why the fight against insecurity is really not just
against insecurity.
Who the bigger guns.
Yes.
It's really about your borders. It's the financial, aspect of it.
It
is also the poverty aspect of it.
Exactly, and then the education angle to it. All right, let's take Lenin calling from Abuja. Good morning, Lenin.
Good morning, all the government of
Morning.
I want to talk about this insecurity matter.
All right, please go ahead.
Remember, a few months ago, the insecurity was getting to Abuja, how proactive our politicians were. The reason was because it was getting to them. Now, Nigeria, we hear that Nigerians have been killed, 400, 200. They don't care because it doesn't affect them directly, right? Now, if they kill, like, if this will kill like a senator or two or a governor, you in less than 1 week, this whole country will be shaking, right? Another issue I want to talk about is the issue of they said people were flocked in Lagos. Remember your newsmen were chased in Lagos during the back governor. Has anything been done to it? No, because nobody cares. Everybody just move. We just move in this country. Everybody just lawless, So it has happened. So we just forget about it. So my point is that the only way Nigerian politicians will be proactive is when the thing is directly affecting them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing
also,
that.
Before we wrap this segment up, I also want to quickly bring in the story on the Daily Independent this morning. Top right corner of the Daily Independent says here, Serap asked Tinubu to stop Wike and governors giving cars and houses to judges. It's very important, because I think last week I tried to expatiate on, the damage that we've done to, the different arms of government, but, in particular the judiciary. But it's not just the damage that was done because of complete disrespect of the judiciary by the previous administration or previous administrations. Not just breaking down the doors of judges, not also because, some members of the judicial arm of government have been complicit, have also allowed themselves to be used to play politics and allowed themselves to be pawns in politics in Nigeria. That's not the only damage that has been done. It's also because we've maintained this culture for the longest time where you see governors buying SUVs or approving money, billions of naira to buy SUVs for judges in the state. You see governors approving funds to build, residential buildings for judges in the state. These have become normal in Nigeria. And I remember that the FCC minister, Nyesom Wike, was called out, at least it was pointed out, that there was something obviously wrong with him, building houses for judges in the FCT. It may not necessarily have been his project, but the way that he carried it upon himself, as if this was, an FCT project that they've delivered to the judges and, coming from the president and all of that. The way that it was portrayed, it seemed like it was a personal gift to the judges, which is completely wrong. We've also seen over the weekend, I think the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, hosted, had some celebration that the CJN was present. I'm not sure if it was her event or she was just present there, but, I saw those pictures and I saw that Chidi Odinkalu had pointed out, the obvious red flags with the Chief Justice of Nigeria frolicking with politicians. It's an obvious major red flag, worse than your dress. That we seem to just ignore because, well, we're Nigeria. Nobody seems to just point out that there's something obviously wrong here with judiciary and members of judiciary frolicking with politicians, receiving gifts from the executive. It's completely wrong. I remember that I read a story about, there was something called the Dutro affair. It's a story of a very, very, it's a very terrible, story. If nobody should bother reading it. But it was a story of a serial rapist and abuser in Belgium in the 50s or so, in the 60s. But the main story was, or the point I'm trying to pick from the story is that one of the judges who was placed in charge of that case was removed from the case, not because of anything in particular, but because the judge attended a fundraising dinner for victims of Dutro. Dutro was the serial rapist and child molester and killer.
So that may have impacted the judge's...
He attended a fundraiser for victims, not for any particular victim, not for any particular family, but just a general fundraiser for victims who had, families and all that who had endured death. Bias. And that alone was enough for that judge to be removed from the case. They eventually replaced him with a more corrupt judge, no doubt. But I'm just pointing out, the reason that he was removed, the bias that was possible just for his attendance of that fundraiser. But in Nigeria, you see them receiving SUVs and houses and whatnot. Okay. And we just see it as normal. We just, okay.
Okay, so, and I hear you completely. What I'm also going to add to that would be the fact that judicial officers and judges have entitlements according to, their offices. So there are a number of them, just the same way that the legislators will argue with you that their cars are part of their entitlements when they come into office. Judicial officers have entitlements. However, the way and manner in which these entitlements are given is what I have a problem with.
Yeah.
Yes, so if you're giving them, there's a budget, there's a procedure, and the governor or the president doesn't have to be the one who directly is involved in doing all that ceremony, because then that colors the line that is supposed to be a very sharp divide between the executive and judiciary. And, it then throws some sort of dust on the conversation about separation of powers and the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary is seen as the last hope of the common man. So anything in any way that gives off the impression that the judiciary is biased. And interestingly, even in court, sometimes judges are asked to recuse themselves of certain cases because there is an a perceived relationship maybe with the opposition, or the opposing the defendant or the prosecution, depending on what side of the divide this matter lies in favor of. So it's very important. Even when you look at the code of conduct for professional practice with law, there are certain things that are not allowed. I need to go and do more research regarding collection of gifts by judges. What I do know, however, is like if you're a party to a case, the judge is not meant to collect any gifts from you. So in this case, because the government will always get into cases that will come before the court, maybe the court needs to step back from accepting gifts from government, and the government needs to stop.
They don't even need to be told. And just for clarity, the event I was speaking about was an event by Lagos State, a dinner honoring the CJN, Justice Kudirat Kikerekun, the GCON, as Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the governor of the executive governor of the state, posted it on his Instagram page. We celebrated her significant contributions as a proud daughter of Lagos and pioneering figure in Nigeria's judiciary. And of course, she was there with, many others, shaking hands and frolicking, with these politicians. Which, like I said, it looks normal. But there's something very, very wrong and off with it. The governor of Lagos, if you remember, also challenged the EFCC a couple of weeks ago, I believe.
No, he's debunked that.
Oh, he's
debunked that,
okay.
Yes. So,
all right,
anyway, we'll move on from this conversation to bring you much more conversations regarding, Nigeria's policies, politics, and the economy. But right now, we're looking at Which Way Nigeria, where we have thought-provoking monologues that get you thinking and, hold our public office holders to account. That's coming up next. Welcome back to Breakfast Central. The National Assembly is currently reviewing landmark tax reform bills that will stop federal agencies like the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, NUPRC, and the Nigerian Customs Service, NCS, from collecting revenue. This major overhaul was confirmed by Taiwo Oyedele, chairman of the Presidential Tax Committee.
The goal is to streamline tax collection and let these agencies focus on their core responsibilities. Approximately 60 federal agencies will be affected, freeing them from tax collection duties. This reform is part of President Bola Tinubu's efforts to transform Nigeria's tax system, making it more efficient by simplifying tax collection across the country. Now joining us is economist and financial analyst Kalu Adja. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
How you doing? Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Let's first of all get your quick reactions, to this. Would you interpret this as a great move by the Tinubu administration? And, what more would you have suggested that they do?
I like it. I think it's a very, very good economic move. It streamlines tax collections. It allows folks to focus on the operational side, and it will allow this revenue service focus on the fiscal side. So good derogation of duties, I think is good. We can account for revenues better with this scenario. And it's the same that we have in the UK and the US as well. So I think that just following best practice internationally, I think is better for us this way. Yeah, what more would I like to see? Just the implementation, right? So if we can get it done and it doesn't increase taxes, then that works for everybody. We don't want to see an increase. This should just be an efficiency drive, more or less, and that works for everyone like that, yeah.
All right, just to mention here that we're seeing that there are a number of bills, about 4 bills here: the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, Nigeria Tax Bill, Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, and the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. Now, if you talk about these being a good move, saying that we're streamlining revenue collation and taxes so that these bodies can be able to function and do what they need to do, why is it that, there's been an uproar by the northern governors who have said that this bill should be dead, or one of the bills should be dead on arrival? They have criticized that, saying that, it's not favorable to the northern part of the country and that it's not going to enable the growth of the region.
Yeah, I think in one of those bills is the suggestion by the president that we should increase derivation. The way it works in Nigeria is that when we get 100 naira, we share out 40 naira based on the principle of equality, then 30 naira goes in principle of population. Derivation is just 10% or 10 naira. What Mr. President is now saying is that it's going to increase the share from the federal to the state. So the states will get more money, but in return, he wants to increase the proportion of derivation from the current 10 to, I'm hearing him saying, about 60%. So the states get more money, but derivation percentage rises in the formula to calculate and share out the federal allocations, what we call FARC. So I think the governors, or the North in quotes, is basically worried that their current revenues is going to go down because it's going to be based on derivation and not on land mass and equality. I think that's not really fair, because what this does is it opens up commerce for the states, right? The more you make, the more you keep. 60% derivation. This is how Nigeria was way back in the 70s. So I think it's a bit short-sighted. They're looking at the current and not the future. If you take derivation up to 60 and you can VAT the goods and commerce in your state and local government area, of course you can retain more, and you can basically make your state more viable as a business entity. So I think it's a bit short. They have been a bit too quick to say no to it. And I haven't read the 4 bills, I would say, in particular. They're picking up just one particular part of the bill. When you read the whole 4, you see the derivation part comes in line with allowing you get more revenues. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want you to expand a little bit more on this 90-70 model that you speak of. I saw that you had also shared a bit, of it. But in the layers or layman, perspective, without any or without too many economic terms, help explain to us, what exactly or how exactly this would work. Because the major challenge that people seem to have is where value-added tax is going to be paid and who's going to be receiving the most of VAT and all of that. So explain it, how this should be beneficial to states across the country.
Sure. I'll give you a good example. Most of the yams in Nigeria, the largest yam farm in Nigeria, or largest markets for yams in Nigeria is in Benue State. When you pay VAT in Nigeria, you are paying to the company where the company is headquartered. So if that yam company, if the yams in Benue are taken to Lagos for processing, but they are sold in Benue, the VAT goes to Lagos State, not to Benue, where the yams are grown, sold, and consumed more or less. So VAT is paid where the head office of the company is domiciled and makes its remittances to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. This bill is saying that VAT should be calculated where the consumption actually takes place. What that means is that, say, if you have MTN or you have Coca-Cola, you have any industry, say food, consumption tax, you pay that tax where it is consumed or where the service is enjoyed, not where the head office is located. This then means that the 36 states of Nigeria become VATable, in quote, not where the head office is, but where you consume the goods and services. So take, for example, tomatoes. If you have a company that says we're going to store tomatoes in Kano, and you bill or you VAT that warehouse, then of course VAT stays in the state where that service or that contract has occurred, and not in the head office, say in Kano or in Lagos, where the tomato processing plant is. So it increases revenues. It allows more states to then become economic centers, to then grow revenues and IGRs that we see. So essentially, the bigger states like Lagos might lose some revenues because that's going to be shared out according to where it is consumed, and not where the head office, just a singular head office, is located. That's going to be the big change in terms of the VAT per se.
Right. So even Lagos State that maybe should be affected by this seems to be very cooperative and very excited about this move. But again, back to you've explained why the uproar and the misunderstanding trailing these bills. These northern leaders and the National Executive Council has asked that the bill, so the northern leaders have said that the bill should be dead on arrival. We've seen people like Senator Ali Ndume speak very strongly against it, but the presidency through Bayo Ononuga has said that the bill would go through the legislative process. How do you foresee that this bill will fare? Do you think that the uproar is strong enough to stall it, or will they maybe need to do some modification based on the concerns that have been raised by the aggrieved or potentially affected parties?
I think they haven't explained the bill properly. I think the federal government hasn't really explained the bill properly. So we hear there's gold in Zamfara, there's iron ore in Kogi, there's cobalt, there's silica in Katsina, uranium in Borno. It's all over the north, right? Imagine if you brought those companies into the north and those companies then paid VAT to the states and local governments. Local governments would be able to charge that VAT and retain it up to 60%. If the Northerners hear this, of course, they see it as a big benefit to them to allow solid minerals to be vatted, to allow the processing, the manufacturing of agricultural products to be processed and vatted in the North. So when you explain it better, I think they then see that it's not going to be a reduction in their FARC returns. That's their worry. But it's actually going to be an increase. And I heard the chairman of the tax committee say, there will be no reduction in what you're getting. Essentially, the federal government is going to take about 5% from the federal share to ensure that you're going to get a minimum payment from the FARC, i.e. you will not get a reduction in what you're basically earning right now. So if you explain it better, I don't see I think it's an up for you with no downside risk, because if you sign up to this, potentially if you grow maize, and you are able to find a way to VAT that transaction or that contract, you retain 60%. Right now, you're retaining 40% on equality, 30% on population, 10% on landmass. So if you're a small state like Lagos, you are being shortchanged, right? Because it's just 10% on landmass. But if you're in the north and you're able to retain 60%, look at Niger State can say, we are going to look for a way to VAT power leaving Niger State. Look for a way to do it. And you retain 60% in the state and local council. So they have to explain it better. It's politics, there will be a give and take, but I think when it's explained this way, they see the benefits to the state and local governments. I think that way they will accept it, yeah.
Yeah. I think I would like that you also chip in a little bit more about what we started with, which is the NEPRC and customs, for example. For the longest time, we seem to have gotten ourselves to a place where government agencies see themselves as revenue generating agencies. Even JAM, will be posting profits at the end of the year, which always seems strange to me. So, do you agree that this new changes or these changes would help these people focus strictly on what they are set up for? And all the while, has the tax, collection distracted customs from its core responsibilities, or is that maybe just an excuse as to why they maybe not have done as well as they should have?
I think it's in economics, scale of control. Do what is your primary responsibility. I mean, you're still going to pay a tax. Customs will still give you a tax bill or an import bill or excise bill. Yeah. But the point is that they give you the circular and you go pay. They don't focus on have you paid, go pay to the cashier, bring your receipt to us, will clear your goods. No, they give you the paperwork, you go pay, then customs focuses on looking at your goods and expecting it. The same with, say, NAFDAC, the same with, say, Nigerian Airways and all that. Essentially, focus on your operational role, give the guy a paperwork to go pay. So the Nigerian Revenue Service can go after you and say, you haven't paid, we're going to take it to court. Customs can't do that. They can't leave the Nigerian ports and start to chase you around Nigeria. But in this case, it's not going to be a secondary payment. You get the circular, it hangs on you, right? You have to pay, otherwise the Nigerian Revenue Service comes after you. So it's a bit of separation of the operational side from the fiscal side. Again, it's best practice. The IRS, collects revenues, but you get charged everywhere you go to. If you want to buy land or you want to import stuff in the US, you get charged, but the IRS collects that, right? So essentially, it's one centralized revenue collection and enumerating agency, allowing the other guys to then do their core operational functions.
All right. I mean, I really look forward to how the implementation of this will be if the bills do pass, especially because, there have been people who have been profiting from this gap and this lacuna that we're currently experiencing, and the fact that also we have a data collation problem. I guess in the next couple,
a lot of leakages.
Yes, we'll see how this will play out. Kaluaja, thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate your time. All right, and I will move from here to which way Nigeria.
Mohammed Saad Abubakar III has appealed to Nigerians to refrain from criticizing their leaders and to allow God to address their shortcomings as he sees fit. The Sultan went on to remind those in leadership positions that they would be held accountable for their actions on the day of judgment. Now, I'm here this morning to once again remind Nigerians that 4 years comes and goes very fast. And if you think you have time, you really don't. Nigeria is a democratic country, and so the aspects of democracy that give the people a voice against bad governance must never be ignored or silenced by traditional, cultural, or religious institutions. And first of all, God will not punish any bad or corrupt leaders. Ogo will not kill anybody on your behalf. Shango will not strike anyone on behalf of the people of Oyo State or anywhere else that believes in Shango. There is no God that is waiting to strike your governor because he mismanaged state resources, running into billions of naira and left the people impoverished. As a Nigerian, it is your responsibility and your duty to hold these people and these politicians accountable. Hold them by the jugular. God will not punish him or her on your behalf. You elected these people into office, and so yes, hold them by the jugular, regardless of what position that they are, from governor to judge to, House of Rep member to Senate president. And from what the Sultan is saying, to not castigate them, but instead leave them to be judged on Judgment Day. Nobody knows when that day will come. And so with all due respect to him, can we do the same thing for others who are currently in jail? Or is this Judgment Day principle only left for political leaders? These people whose actions and inactions have led to the destruction of our states and institutions, destruction of the country at large, the people who have failed to protect Nigerians, who have stolen our commonwealth, those who have enriched themselves and their families with money that should have been used to pay the Nigerian workers' salaries and pensions at old age, to fix hospitals and schools and roads. It is very tough to ask that Nigerians not hold these people to account, but instead leave them to be judged on Judgment Day. The opportunity for you, the average Nigerian, to live and experience a country that works is being stolen every day that a weak or a failing government stays in office without being questioned and held to account. Nigerians don't want to grow old wishing for a better life, while those who have plunged the country into its current mess just go scot-free and wait for Judgment Day. Again, God is not going to punish your leaders when they fail. It's better that you hold them to account today and hold them by the jugular. Good morning, Nigerians.
On Monday's episode of Breakfast Central, the show continues same time tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on DSTV 422. You can also catch us on YouTube, X, Facebook, and all social media platforms at News Central TV. I am Olive MOD.
And I am Osaogi Ogbonwo. We've had a really interesting Monday, by the way, and I hope that, thanks to all those who called as well, those who, of course, join us via social media platforms. We appreciate your presence. We'll be back here again tomorrow in our regular studio so you can see the full length of our broadcast. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Osao Gilbon. See you tomorrow.